2017 Arkansas Bigfoot Conference, brought to you by Robert Swain, the founder and director of the Arkansas Primate Evidence Society, better known as APES. In this video series, Robert Swain will speak about Bigfoot in Arkansas. Mark Sawdust Newble will talk about how to become a researcher. D.W. Darkwing Lee will give his insight on how to find the right Bigfoot group to join. Lyle Blackburn will discuss his new book, Beyond Boggy Creek, and Randy Revelistic Savig will address the topic of what are we listening for in the woods. This conference concluded with the showing of Lyle Blackburn's The Boggy Creek Monster documentary, which is a must-see if you enjoy the legend of Boggy Creek. As always, the Arkansas Bigfoot Conference was a huge success, and we thank the folks that came out and you for watching this video series.
We're covering this whole region here in our speakers. Randy is a friend. If I had just one word to talk about him, he is a friend. He is a good grandpa. When we go out squatching, he'll bring his family, which includes his grandkids, and they're very well behaved, and he's doing a great job with them. And he's teaching them how to squatch, how to be confident in the woods, and I think that's really a great thing. Randy's emphasis is on audio. He puts recorders up, and he reviews that, and that's I think what he's going to talk about here. After Randy speaks, Lyle Blackburn is going to show the Boggy Creek documentary that came out last year that has been an award winner already in some shows. It's really a good documentary, and we're going to end the day that way. But I'm going to turn it over to Randy. Are you ready?
I'm as ready as I'm going to get.
All right.
Good afternoon, everybody. Again, I am Randy Savig. I'm the State Director, Missouri State Director for the MABRC. I got into this a few years ago and found the audio to be a little bit of a niche that I do. Robert has been putting on, as well as it's a joint MABRC APES folk expedition for the last 3 years. The last couple of years I've been involved in it and had a lot of fun down there. Basically what we're going to do today is I'm going to try to cover two bases. One is to cover the audio some of the audio that was collected during the expedition this year. But two, I'd like to give you a little bit better idea of what we do with the audio when we get it. To me, yeah, it's cool hearing these screams and these howls and whatever else. I have a lot of fun with that. But I'm more now towards where else is that type of vocalization happening? What could they possibly mean? Does it match up with others from other parts of the country? So that's going to be part of the basis on here. Go ahead and next screen, please. Again, like I said, these are the two organizers for this joint expedition. One is Robert Swain, the other is Jim Whitehead. He couldn't make it, unfortunately. He ended up having truck trouble on Thursday morning, and he couldn't make it in. He had a presentation ready, and he's probably one of the better trackers that I know. Jim has taught me a lot about tracking. Jim is a certified, or whatever they call it, biologist. He's worked with the state of Oklahoma on several different projects. I've learned a whole lot from Big Jim. Some of the pictures that are going to be in this are of his cast. When they get up there, if I don't happen to say something about it, that cast that the picture is was cast after having a thermal hit that 3 of the people, I think Sean and Crystal were involved with that, had seen the thermal footage on a thermal the night before. They went out the next morning And right where it was standing, that's where the cast was printed at. Go ahead and go to the next one, please. Let me get rid of that. I'm tired of it already. Okay, now this first screen, in the middle of it, you're going to see that thing that looks, what is that? That's called a spectrogram. Anybody that's dealt with audio knows that we can hear things, but it's more important to see what we're hearing. Every animal in the world leaves a signature of how their vocalizations sound. That can be seen on a spectrogram. Now this spectrogram, if you can see on the left-hand side, it's kind of blurry, but there's two different vocal tracks. That's because that's in stereo. The horizontal like lines is the vocalization that we're catching. And again, you can see like the first one seems to be long and drawn out, and then there's one that kind of wobbles a little bit. If anybody's ever heard a coyote warble, that's that second part. Now one thing that we always have, or not always, but one thing that's a big question is we get these weird howls that seem to set off coyotes out there. Now, the average person will sit and say, well, hey, that's just coyotes. But when you look at the research that's been done with coyotes, a lot of universities tried to use coyote vocalizations as a way to deter them from farmers' livestock. So they studied the coyotes at a length. And you know, of all the recordings I've heard, the low howls aren't part of coyotes. So go ahead and play that one, would you? And that's where the coyotes come in. Did you notice how that kind of sounds a lot more raspy? If that's a coyote, that sucker's got a heck of a cold. You know, and again, if that was a coyote, you should only catch it here in full. You shouldn't be able to catch that anywhere else. Go to the next screen, would you, bud? This is a research area that I've been researching now for about 7 years in southwestern Missouri. This area is 300 miles due north of where we did the expedition in the Folk area. Now if you take a look, the first signature on the left-hand side there, it's a lower signature, nice and flat. Again, you're going to hear that that's raspy. Now just in from that, where there'd be about the 3-second mark, you'll hear what is a typical vocalization of a coyote howl. Go ahead and play that, would you please? Now, can I say that's a Bigfoot? No, I can't. But it doesn't fit the profile of the coyote. You know, and again, I have people all the time, well, it's with the coyotes, that means it's coyote. Anybody ever heard a cop car siren and then the coyote set off? That cop car ain't a coyote, folks. I can do howls in the woods. If the coyotes are around, I can set them off. Am I a coyote? You know, that low of a profile, again, this is a megahertz. The numbers are kind of in the megahertz. It also means nothing more than that's the tone, if you will. I mean, that's language I can understand. The tones are low enough that they're usually in the 400 to 500 range, runs more in lines with wolves, but it doesn't follow the pattern of a wolf vocalization. So what do we have? Do we have some type of situation that the Bigfoot or whatever is making that vocalization is setting off the coyotes? And if so, what for? I can't answer that question, but it's one that I'm trying to learn about and try to figure out. Oh, by the way, if you guys got any questions when I'm going through this, if something ain't clear enough, raise your hand, throw something at me, whatever. I mean, sometimes I think that, you know, Mark can understand what I'm talking about because Mark and I are researchers and we do a lot of audio work. And I forget at times that not everybody is aware of what we look for in signatures and stuff. Now, again, if this has happened in southwestern Missouri, now what's the chance we got 2 coyotes with colds? You know, I don't think that's really possible. But again, we're catching it in other places. This has also been, or similar to this, recorded in other parts of Arkansas and in Oklahoma. So again, it's not that unusual of a thing. Why don't you go to the next screen, please? Now this one is going to be another comparison to that type of vocalization. These casts are the one that I was talking about that Big Jim had taken after the thermal hit. The one in the lower corner where there's a smaller one, that was a comparison shot from one that was in Yosemite out in California. Now, when you take a look at this spectrogram, there's a lot of stuff here, folks. I mean, to you guys it probably looks like lines, but if Mark takes a look at that, Shelley takes a look at that, they're going to know what they're looking at. But one thing I'd like to point out is there's going to be 2 of them that seem quite a bit higher than the rest of them, right at the beginning. Then they kind of look like a curve. That's one critter. I don't know exactly what critter it is, but I'm hoping I do. Then you've got your coyotes. You can see where they're in their tone area. Those are typical coyotes. Now you go over to the middle of this, and you've got a third vocalizer, the one that's low toned again. Now, this is kind of a rare one to run into because they're just odd. I mean, these low tones is one vocalization that we believe is connected with Bigfoot. The only place I've caught this is where there is historical and modern time Bigfoot sightings reports and suspected Bigfoot activities. But again, the next one we're going to go to is those ones that are real high pitched. They might be a little faint, but I think they'll come out clear. Now, those are typical coyotes that you're hearing. You know, there's a lot of weird stuff going on in there. And you know, our ears can play tricks on us just as much as our minds can, or, you know, we see something, we thought it moved, and it was a leaf, it wasn't a critter, you know. We hear things, you know, we're out in the field, and it was a dang dog bark. When we get home, we put on the headphones and see what it looks like. No, it wasn't a dog bark, it was a whoop. This is one of those cases. We heard that night, and all I was really hearing was that one low tone and the coyotes. But then when I reviewed it, those others came out. And you know, as faint as they were, if I wouldn't have been watching the spectrogram as it's going along, I may have missed those. Sir?
Did you say a roof-to-roo? Is that what you said, roof? A while ago? Did you say you heard a roof?
Oh, whoop.
A whoop, oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
I'm good.
Well, again, I got a combination of redneck and Norwegian, so between that, you know, we're in trouble anyway. Those high pitched that I had you that were real faint, that sound like screams, has anybody ever heard of someone talking about hearing a woman being murdered scream?
Yep.
You know, I have other trusted researchers have put some of that stuff out and said, this sounds like a woman being screamed or being murdered. And each one of them sound a little bit different. I'm not going to put that type of adjective with that vocalization. I'm just going to call it a scream. Because I've never seen a woman getting murdered screaming. Kind of like I can't say these are Bigfoot vocalizations because I did not see the Bigfoot doing it. They're unknown vocalizations that A, don't match known critters, and we go through lots and lots of hours of trying to compare unknown vocalizations. And, you know, I don't know how many hours of head to phone time I've had doing that. Not only do we listen to them, but again, when you put them on a spectrogram, now you're seeing the entire signature of how it performs its vocalizations. And that sometimes, if you've got one that's sounding a little weird, because all vocalizations with animals fluctuate. I mean, when I talk, my voice is the same as somebody else's, but their pitch might be different. When we put it on the spectrogram, we can find out whose is whose. You know, if you've recorded mine and recorded yours, we can put them on the spectrogram and figure out who's talking when, even if we don't hear it. Go on to the next screen, please. This is something, again, was recorded this year at Falk. Now, you can see this spectrogram looks a whole lot different than the last one. You notice that blank area in the bottom of both of them? That's a filterization that we use to try to highlight or draw out some of the vocalizations that we hear. Now, most of those vocalizations that seem to go top to bottom, they're going to be voices. They're going to be us talking at camp. The first night while we were discussing what we were going to do for night ops, there was a very distant vocalization. Now, you can see the lines. It's better on the bottom side because, again, this is stereo. One microphone's facing that way, one microphone's facing that way. That can also be good when we're doing research because next year, that vocalization was to the south. We can move our audio equipment further south to try to get a clear howl or a clear sound of what's going on. But on the bottom, you're going to see some horizontalish lines that kind of fade down. Again, this does set off coyotes. And when we were talking about it, you're going to hear one young man in there say, "Did you hear that?" Now again, these are going to be faint, but I think you'll be able to pick them up.
There's a group, and I don't think they have anybody to go with them. I could, yeah. Let him ride, yeah.
Did you hear those?
Can you play it again?
Yes, we sure can.
There's a group, and I don't think they have anybody to go with them. I could, yeah. Let him ride, yeah.
That again, to me, sure does sound like a scream. You know, and to be honest, you know, I listen to a lot of audio, but I do reading at times when I'm with it. And one thing that's neat about camp audio is you get to listen to the people. If I want to have been listening to that young man say, "Did you hear that?" I didn't have the mic, I didn't have it loud enough in my ears to hear the signature. So then I backed up, and sure enough, there's a signature, there's a vocalization. You know, so that again is part of the reason why these spectrograms can be so important, but also camp audio. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that gets talked out about camp that will never be aired as long as I live, but sometimes it's a very, very beneficial thing to have. Now later on that night, next screen please, it happened again. Now this one's looking a little bit weirder because again, it's shorter time frame. I stretched out the seconds of doing it. But you will also hear a faint scream in the background, please. could also hear me snoring, sorry about that, folks. It does happen even to me, and Larry's not the only one. Why was this vocalization important for me today, even though it was so faint? Next screen, please. Because we heard the same thing. Hope you jumped one. I think so. Must have gotten it out of work. Okay, go ahead. You know, we catch these at different times. Oh, sorry, I messed up. Why is it important? Because again, we catch these in other places. This is back up in my main research area. Now, I got a call back in 2015. My daughter's in a panic. It's the 22nd of December. Dad, I haven't packed a dang present for these kids. What can we do about it? Can they come over tomorrow night? I said, sure. I'm a Bigfooter. What does that mean? Hey, hon, I'm going to take the kids out because, we don't want to destroy the house, so we're going to take the kids out. We're going to go Bigfoot. They thought it was great. I told Bernie, I said, hey, let's go out. I took 3 of my grandkids, 2 granddaughters, 1 grandson. Bernie brought his granddaughter out. We went out Bigfoot. That night we did something that we occasionally do out in the woods. We'll drop one truck off at the start of the trails that we take out into the woods. Bernie likes to walk in and follow in case, there's something around, especially when we got the kids. We throw them in the back of the truck in the woods. I don't mind that. If they fall out, they'll bounce. And we go to where we're going to camp. Bernie follows up walking behind in case, something happens to follow. And that's what we did that night. And I mean, for the most part, that night was just dead quiet. So Bernie says, well, I'm going to go and get my truck. And kids were rambunctious. I mean, them girls were just being typical little girls and driving us nuts. And I said, hey, Bernie, why don't you take the girls? He said, okay. So we gave radios. Anybody that does research know we use radios a lot. Because again, there's a lot of times where we're in areas where there's no cell service, but we can still talk to each other. So they took a walkie-talkie and I kept one at camp. And, we had kind of discussed, why don't we do, well, you guys have all seen it on Finding Bigfoot. Bobo goes over there, Matt goes over there. Bobo scream, Matt scream, and see if they can't get something to go between them. Well, we did something similar to that night. I mean, that's kind of typical. The girls, they ain't got a howl, but they got a scream. I can howl fairly well, so when they got there, I said, we're going to play that game. You guys scream, and then I'll howl, and you guys scream, and we'll see if we can't get something else drawn. Nothing was happening to speak of. So the girls did one more scream. Now, the first high-pitched vocalization on there is the girls screaming. My grandson here, we all know girls got cooties, so my grandson wanted to stay with me. He didn't want to go with the girls. He's at camp with me, and you'll hear him say something on the way, but this first one is the grandkids screaming. They were about 3/4 of a mile away as far as the crow flies.
I heard something there, but again, it seemed real distant.
A lot of fir trees between us.
Did they just do a second one?
No.
No, Papa, that's over there.
And again, that was my grandson. No, Papa, that was over there, not over here where they went. This was one of those few times, because I bet every research group has probably done this. Again, calling, trying to draw them in. You do it time and time again, and if they're not in the area, you get 0 results. This is one of those times where it worked. Now, again, Bernie's, as the trail goes, probably 1.25 miles. As the crow flies, he was about 3/4 of a mile. Well, anybody that's drove those back old logging roads, they're not 45-mile-an-hour roads. So as Bernie was driving back, we're hearing more of these scream vocalizations. Go to the next one, would you? This was the sequence that was closest together, but this was recorded as they were driving back that night. Go ahead. Can you play this one, please? Now again, these were moving. You know, I know that gray fox makes some incredibly strange noises in the woods. And you know, my first thought, even with the first reply we got back at camp, I was thinking that it was a fox. But then I pull up all the fox vocalizations that I've got on my computer and spectrograms, and I'm not finding it. You know, and again, people that have listened to it, well, it sounds like humans screaming. Again, back to that lady being killed scream. You know, and then someone says, well, does that mean that Bigfoot is human? No. You know, there's no evidence of it. When you start looking at vocalizations even from chimpanzees, when you do a lot of listening to that, they're up and close. You know, Jane Goodall does a great job of having her people put together videos with good vocalizations of chimpanzees, and they're nice and up and close. They're not 3/4 of a mile away or better. You're not dealing with the distortions that you can get when recording outdoors. You know, if you didn't know something unknown like a Bigfoot might be out there, I could see where a person would say, this is another person out there screaming. But it doesn't fit the bill of being people. I mean, we know these things can mimic. I mean, any of you that might have been at the Oklahoma Symposium a few years ago, I recorded something mimicking what I was saying in the woods. I said the same thing. It was a beep, beep, beep 4 times. And 4 times something in the woods repeated it after me.